Good morning. We are live across the entire town hall media sphere, including all our social media platforms. And we're brought to you today by the Electronic Payments Coalition. Thanks for tuning in. Why is Gen Z on TikTok so in love with Al Qaeda terrorists? We'll tell you, I guess, although I don't think I get it still. And is Donald Trump right that any foreign national in this country protesting on behalf of Hamas should be deported immediately? We'll explore that issue. Also, our favorite, Senator Kennedy, interviewing the judicial nominees from Joe Biden, and it did not go well for the judges. We're going to bring you all that and more coming up right now. You told me 20 years ago that someday soon, kids in their 20s would be reading Osama bin Laden's letter to America explaining why he murdered 3,000 Americans and showing some level of sympathy and support for Osama bin Laden's position. I would laugh in your face. And yet, here we are. The Guardian newspaper over in England, a very left-wing liberal newspaper, super left-wing, like they're socialists, the Guardian. 20 years ago, they published Osama bin Laden's letter. It's like publishing the Unabomber's manifesto, right? And it just sat there on their website forever. Somebody uncovered it, started reading it on TikTok, and it went viral, became a thing. Here's the result.
This morning, I read Letter to America, which is Osama bin Laden's letter to America explaining why he attacked Americans. And I am ashamed to say that I not only have never read this letter, but I didn't even know this letter existed.
I'm ashamed to say that I've never read Mein Kampf. I didn't even know Mein Kampf existed. I'm ashamed to say that I never really dug deep and understood why Hitler slaughtered millions of Jews and tried to take over the world. How embarrassing of me. That's where we are right now with this generation.
It's wild, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read it yet, read it. However, be forewarned that this has left me very disillusioned, and I feel the same exact way I felt when I was deconstructing Christianity. I feel a little bit just confused, like I have entered into another timeline. What is this? And yeah, so go read it.
Well, now it's starting to all make sense now because she just recently deconstructed Christianity. She just deconstructed Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and 2,000 years of the greatest thinkers in Western civilization, figuring out our actual meaning, not to mention deconstructing the revelation that God handed to us through his prophets and through his son, Jesus Christ. Well, thank God she deconstructed that. And now that she's read Osama bin Laden's letter, it's all starting to make sense. I mean, just look at her. Folks, if your son brings her home for dinner, it's time to pull the emergency cord.
So I just read A Letter to America, and I will never look at life the same. I will never look at this country the same. Please read it. And if you have read it, let me know if you are also going through an existential crisis in this very moment. Because in the last 20 minutes, my entire viewpoint on the entire life I have believed and I have lived has changed. Please read that entire letter.
If a letter from a bloodthirsty, mass murdering terrorist can change your entire view and perspective on America and life itself in just 20 minutes, how solid was that foundation in the first place? I mean, really? You know how you always wonder how young women end up dating, falling in love with, and marrying mass murderers who are on death row? It happens all the time. It's a phenomenon. Psychologists have been trying to examine it for years. You ever wonder, how is that possible? How's that? This is how it's possible. But more importantly, the fact that this is going viral, when things go viral on TikTok, it's not some organic thing because, oh, it's so popular. Everyone has to see it. Everyone has to share it. No. China, the government of China, the Communist Party in China, the people that Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom are celebrating and dining with, and corporate America is whining and dining as we speak in San Francisco right now. They're deliberately doing this. They are poisoning our culture and poisoning the minds of our children. They see something like this and they force it into the algorithm and make it go viral. This isn't organic. This is an assault on our nation.
I need everyone to stop what they're doing right now and go read. It's literally 2 pages. Go read A Letter to America. And please come back here and just let me know what you think, because I feel like I'm going through like an existential crisis right now. And a lot of people are. So I just need someone else to be feeling this too.
This is classic TikTok. It's classic liberal TikTok. It's classic young Gen Z, mostly women, although not sure about this one, on TikTok. Because you're going to notice a pattern here. They're all using the same words and the same. Notice how they're all saying existential crisis. Do you think they've ever said existential crisis in their lives until they heard somebody else who they think looks really pretty and cool and trendy on TikTok say the exact same thing? And so now they repeat it themselves. Classic, absolute classic. It has all the earmarks.
I need you to stop what you're doing and go read A Letter to America. It is literally the craziest thing I've read in a while. And while I can't say that I'm that surprised, I am pretty shocked. So go read it and tell me what you think, because I really also need to talk to other people about this. And actually, before you even read the letter, I did want to mention, in reading the letter, I could only think of this tweet that I saw the other day. Under settler colonialism, any kind of resistance is branded as terrorist because the only acceptable violence is violence by the occupier.
So this is fucking insane. I just read Osama Bin Laden's Letter to America, which I will be going through right here, but it's actually so mind-fucking to me that has been sold as this idea to the American people, and honestly just so many Western inhabitants within certain nations, that this group of people, this random group of people, just suddenly wakes up one day and just fucking hates you, just wants you dead, wants you gone. And this is all because they believe that they're better than us. Like, that is the root of terrorism. It doesn't make sense. They just hate your fucking nation. But reading this letter, it becomes apparent to me that the actions of 9/11 and those acts committed against the USA and its people were all just the buildup of our government failing other nations.
Yeah, let me pause here for a moment. Do you notice also another pattern of behavior where they're all putting up this straw man built on ignorance, that we were told we were attacked because Osama bin Laden hates our freedoms. We were told we were attacked because these people just woke up suddenly and decided they hated us. Nobody told you that. I mean, unless you went to some left-wing liberal arts university that you expect me now to pay for by relieving you of your student debt, and you got some socialist professor who decided to feed a lie into your head. I'm sorry, children. I was there. I was a young adult and a brand new father on September 11th, 2001. And nobody, and I mean nobody, that day, the next day, or in the intervening years, thought that Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden just woke up one day and decided to hate us and kill us. No one thought that. We knew Al-Qaeda was out there. We knew they hated us. We knew they hated us because of the first Gulf War, when we went after Saddam Hussein for invading a neighbor Arabian nation, Kuwait. We know that Al-Qaeda hated us because we built an airfield at the permission of the Saudi government in Saudi Arabia, because they thought that American planes and the American military on the land in Saudi Arabia desecrated their holy land. We've known that forever. And oh, by the way, we know they hate us, and we knew they hate us then because we supported Israel. And we know they hate Israel because they're anti-Semitic. So please stop. Oh my gosh, this has blown my mind. I've been lied to all this time. Okay, if you've been lied to by the only professors you've known in your life, the socialists that you love and adore. They've lied to you. But we know the truth because we were there. And where the hell is your mother and father to teach you otherwise? Yeah, we've reached that point now. We've reached that point. Osama bin Laden was right. Osama bin Laden had a point. We've got people chanting in the streets right now. Hitler had a point. Hitler was right. Hitler knew what to do with you people. And now we've got the same thing on TikTok. And you don't think China's laughing at this?
in majority of these situations, and this letter was insanely eye-opening. I really urge everybody to Google and read it, because I thought that I had quite a lot of media literacy, but this takes it to a whole nother fucking level where I was just like, holy shit, like propaganda is genuinely so deeply embedded into our fucking DNA.
Read a letter to America. You're probably waking up. You probably have a lot of questions. Welcome to the club. But we don't have a lot of time to sit and talk about everything because there's still so many puzzle pieces that we just do not know about.
Go read A Letter to America. Like, seriously, go read it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I will read it, or at least I'll read part of it. And it's not going to be easy because they all found this on the Guardian's website. And the Guardian itself, did I mention that they were a socialist, left-wing, radical website, the Guardian? Even they realize how dangerous and ill-informed this BS is. They've removed the letter from their website because it went viral. Their message now, where that letter used to sit, says the transcript published on our website 20 years ago has been widely shared today on social media without its original context. Therefore, we've decided to take it down. But Sagar Enjeti, YouTube host, he recommends that if you're going to read Letter to America, specifically focus on these last portions of it. For instance, right here, justifying why the American people, innocent American civilians, were legitimate targets for his bloodthirsty, murderous rampage. The American people are the ones who pay the taxes which fund the planes that bomb us in Afghanistan, the tanks that strike and destroy our homes in Palestine. By the way, real fast there, all those weapons that were in Afghanistan from America, they were there to fund Osama bin Laden and his buddies from Saudi Arabia when they were part of the Mujahideen fighting against Soviet occupation. So just so you know, Osama was in Afghanistan because he was our pal back then as part of the Mujahideen. He loved our weapons then when he could use anti-tank missiles, shoulder rockets brought to you by the United States military. He's fine then. Now he's upset that weapons are in Afghanistan because they aren't being used against the Soviets. I'll continue. The tanks that strike and destroy our homes in Palestine, the armies which occupy our lands in the Arabian Gulf, and the fleets which ensure the blockade of Iraq. These tax dollars are given to Israel for it to continue to attack us and penetrate our lands. So the American people are the ones who fund the attacks against us, and they're the ones who oversee the expenditures of these monies in the ways they wish through their elected candidates. In other words, these idiots, these morons, these morally bankrupt kids on TikTok are buying into the idea that 3,000 innocent Americans on September 11th deserve to die, and it was just and righteous because they pay taxes and voted for governments that carried out our national security agenda. So if you don't want that to happen again, vote the way Osama bin Laden wants you to vote. That's their takeaway. Also, the American army is part of the American people. It is this very same people who are shamelessly helping the Jews fight against us. Wait a second. I thought it was Zionists. I thought it was the state of, we have nothing against the Jews. We're not anti-Semitic. We love the Jews. We want to coexist with the Jews. It's just the Zionists we don't like. Oh, no. Apparently, Osama bin Laden didn't get that memo. And these very same TikTokers that are buying it and saying, my God, Osama bin Laden was right. He had a great point. This was all legit. The letter that they're specifically saying changed their lives call out the Jews. Please, I mentioned Mein Kampf earlier. The last thing we need is for these morons to start reading Mein Kampf. Boy, will that blow their mind. I've been lied to all this time about World War II. The American people are the ones who employ both their men and their women in the American forces which attack us. So there you go. Americans, you deserve to be attacked because you have an army. This is the moral idiocy that they're subscribing to. This is why the American people cannot be not innocent of all the crimes committed by the Americans and Jews against us. Not the Israelis, the Jews. If we haven't said it before, and I know we have, but we'll say it again. Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, go into your kids' room when they come home from school, take their phone, delete TikTok, and block it from being installed. While you're at it, just keep their phone, honestly. Quick moment now to tell you about our friends at Electronic Payments Coalition, because you know they're all over this so-called big box bill. Big box retailers, spearheaded by Walmart and Target, they want a massive handout from Congress because, yeah, that's what they need. And we're talking about billions of dollars. Consumers, small businesses, we're going to be left paying the bill. Retail giants are lobbying Congress right now as we speak for legislation creating harmful credit card routing mandates. Big box bill would pump billions of dollars into large companies already valued at hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's going to squeeze out small local businesses, eliminating almost all funding for popular consumer credit cards rewards programs, weakening cybersecurity, and reducing access to credit for Americans most in need. But other than that, it's a great idea. Go to stopthebigboxbaitandswitch.com, read about this bill, educate yourself, and then utilize their form that allows you to send a direct message to your congressman and your senator to tell them in no uncertain terms that you know what they're trying to do and you're against it. Stop the big box bill. Stop the big box baitandswitch.com. Last night in Washington, D.C., speaking of moral idiots, we had an illegal protest that turned into a riot. Here's the local Fox 5 in D.C. reporting on the event.
And we start the 10 with breaking news from Capitol Hill. Clashes breaking out with protesters outside the DNC headquarters a day after the massive March for Israel on the National Mall.
Let me just add a little context to there. I like these guys at Fox 5. They're actually pretty good. But if I were writing the copy, I would say this violent, illegal protests the day after the incredibly 100% peaceful protest march of nearly 300,000 Israel-loving Americans. The contrast is uncanny, is it not? This was 150 people who did not have a permit, did not have the right to even march, let alone protest, let alone what you're about to see.
5 learning Capitol Police had to remove some pro-Palestinian protesters demanding a ceasefire. Our Shamari Stone joining us live in Southeast with more details. Shamari, tell us, what is the scene like out there right now, and what are we learning about these protests?
Well, good evening. First of all, things have calmed down really a lot outside the DNC headquarters. You can see these U.S. Capitol Police officers on their bikes patrolling now. They just actually opened up the street moments ago to allow people to walk through. Again, things have calmed down. You look right over here, and they had on riot gear. Now that's been put into those 2 white vans you see right there. We're talking about the shields. You have the...
All right, so that's the aftermath. But what did it look like actually on the ground? Important for you to see exactly what we're talking about, and also important for you to know the geography here. You saw that street there in Southeast D.C. in front of the Democratic National Committee's headquarters. It is within the same block of congressional offices. It's about what would you say, 2 blocks away from Capitol Hill. And the legislative offices where committee hearings are would take place, where you've got senators and congressmen and their staffers going through the business of legislation. And last night they were all in session because it was a late night in the Senate going over a bill that would keep the government funded. So this is right there. This is on Capitol Hill. This is right there in the middle of the legislative branch. And here's what it looked like. Important for you also to know, I'll let it run here. Important for you also to know that building, the doors that they're blocking there, that the police are pulling them off of, that's the Democratic National Committee headquarters. They actually found every exterior door to that building and blockaded it that way, thus trapping the people inside. At one point, they were pounding on those glass doors, trying to break into the building as well. And there were not only Democrat congressmen in that building, but Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the Democrats, he was in the building at the time too, as well as several Democrats who were of Jewish descent, dealing with this mob, this riot outside. And look at what the Capitol Police have to do here to try to pry these people away. Now, during the riot, Marco Rubio, senator, his office building was right in the vicinity. He tweeted out that all U.S. House buildings were on lockdown. Significant demonstration activity. That's a nice euphemism. No entry or exit. No one was allowed in and no one was allowed out of any of those buildings. Sure looks insurrection-y to me, doesn't it to you? You saw what the scene was like there. You saw all of the people who were resisting, even moving away from the door, let alone resisting arrest. And this morning we got the data, the statistics on this riot. 6 Capitol Police officers were injured. Several of them, were pepper sprayed by these protesters. One of them was punched and pushed into a wall. The Capitol Police put out a statement on this. Look at the headline: unlawful demonstration. In other words, about 150 people. And from the moment they set foot on the street and started their march, they were breaking the law. All 150 of them were breaking the law because there was no permit pulled. It's very easy to pull a permit for a march in D.C. Here in D.C., they call it First Amendment activity. First Amendment doesn't cover what you just saw in that video. Every single one of them was breaking the law. Then you had 6 police officers injured. You had a woman punched in the face by the protesters. You had every door blocked. You also saw them attempting to bust in and break through the doors. That's vandalism. That's attempted breaking and entering. How many laws need to be broken here, right? Approximately 200 people. I said 150. We've handled hundreds of peaceful protests, but last night's group was not peaceful. The crowd failed to obey our lawful orders, also against the law, by the way, to move back from the DNC where members of Congress were in the building. When the group moved dumpsters in front of the exits, also against the law, pepper sprayed our officers, and attempted to pick up a bike rack, also against the law. Our teams quickly introduced consequences, pulling people off the building, pushing them back, and clearing them from the area. 6 officers were treated for injuries from minor cuts and being pepper sprayed and being punched. 24-year-old Ruben Arthur Camacho of Woodbridge, New York, was arrested for assault on a police officer. Did you catch that? Nearly 200 people in an illegal march and an illegal protest refused to obey lawful commands from a police officer, attempted breaking and entering, moved a bike rack that was used for crowd control purposes, pepper sprayed, assaulted. 6 police officers were injured, moved dumpsters to block entrances and exits to the building. 1 arrest. 1 arrest. 1 arrest. Are we to believe that that one person assaulted all 6 police officers? Every single one of them could have been arrested, but they weren't. We'd love now to show you the video of Justice Department Attorney General Merrick Garland announcing that he'll begin a federal investigation and mobilizing a unit of the FBI to investigate those people last night so that each and every one of them will be dealt with in the same way that the January 6th protesters and rioters were dealt with. We'd love to show you that video, but it doesn't exist because there's 2 rules in this country. And apparently, the rule applies differently to you than it does to them. Also, this woman was really impressive, I have to say. I understand she's single,
We're
guys.
outside the DNC. We're outside the Democratic Party headquarters because this party claims to be on the side of life and peace and equality. And we're saying that we want them to live up to their values and oppose this horrific war and call for a ceasefire now. And we're being responded to by the police shoving anti-war activists down the stairs, shoving peaceful protesters back with their bikes. And because our party that 80% of us want a ceasefire, would rather beat up protesters.
Hold on.
That's right. And she said something really important there, didn't she? Our party. That's right. Our party. Every single one of them are Democrats. Every single one of them are Democrats. Every single one of them support the party that they're now trying to bust into. In 1964, Ronald Reagan switched parties from Democrat to Republican, and he gave a speech on behalf of Barry Goldwater that year during the convention leading up to the election, the presidential election. And the name of that speech was called A Time for Choosing. It's supposed to be a time for choosing for the American people to choose between Johnson and Goldwater. And of course, the American people chose Johnson at the time, although one would argue that eventually the American people saw things Ronald Reagan's way, and I would argue they still do. But A Time for Choosing is such a great name for a speech when a country is at a crossroads. And I got to tell you, the Democratic Party right now, they're at a crossroads. It's a time for choosing. Are they going to go with that mob? Or are they going to go with where their party has traditionally always been? It's a fair question to ask, and I'm not holding my breath as to the results. Meanwhile, President Trump, at a speech that he gave last weekend, talked about exactly the kind of behavior you just saw that we have seen over and over again in our city streets and in our college campuses ever since the terror attacks of October 7th.
If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you in our country, and you're not going to be getting into our country. I will cancel the student visas, Hamas sympathizers on college campuses. The college campuses are being taken over. And all of the resident aliens who joined in the pro-jihadist protest this month, nobody's ever seen anything like it. Come 2025, we will find you and we will deport you.
Why is that even controversial? Because apparently it is. The idea that a president of the United States or the American government would actually analyze your behaviors as a guest in our country. Someone who's sitting here on a visa, and Lord knows a ton of them don't even have visas. They're probably in the country illegally because literally over 8 million have crossed into our country illegally that we know of since Joe Biden became president. But you're here in this country as a guest, and you are not only an activist against the interests of the American government, but you're actually celebrating, promoting, and advancing the cause of a terror organization, terrorists. Why wouldn't we deport you? Why doesn't every candidate for president have that position? And here's the best part of it, as people wring their hands and whine and complain that this is controversial and wrong and xenophobic and fascist and all the things that they call us. This isn't even new policy. What President Trump just articulated there in that speech is our law right now. Senator Marco Rubio sent a letter to the State Department asking for confirmation about what the current law is for people who are conducting themselves in this way. And the fact of the matter is, as you can see in this response from the Justice Department, and the response is from, no, we don't have the name of the person who sent the letter. Come on, Senator Rubio, give us the name. You can see the highlighted area. The Department of State has broad authority under the INA, that's the Immigration and Nationality Act, passed in 1997, to revoke visas. We, the Department of Justice, exercise that authority when there is information or evidence indicating a visa holder may be eligible for a U.S. visa. When we receive derogatory information that indicates potential visa ineligibility, we take immediate actions, such as entering the information in U.S. government databases and revoking visas if deemed appropriate. It's already law. It's already the stated policy of the United States of America, duly passed by legislation in 1997 and signed into law by that crazy right-wing xenophobic nationalist MAGA hat wearing president Bill Clinton. There is nothing controversial about this. That speech that President Trump just gave, saying that if you are protesting on behalf of terrorists and Hamas, and you are operating against the best interests of the United States of America and our foreign policy, you will be deported. He's actually just stating the law that Bill Clinton signed in 1997. There's nothing new there, and there's certainly nothing controversial about it. I bet Joe Biden voted for it. Not that he would remember. I mean, he doesn't remember what he had for lunch. Meanwhile, as we literally have anti-Semitic, Hitler-loving Nazi protesters celebrating Hamas on the streets of the United States of America, the mainstream media wants you to know that Donald Trump is literally Hitler. Now, I know that's not news to you because you've been hearing it for years now. And make no mistake, when they say that Donald Trump is Hitler, what they're really saying is you are a Nazi. Because who supports and votes for Hitler? Nazis. This is their way of calling you a Nazi without actually having any dirt on their hands. They want you to know that Donald Trump is literally Hitler right now because he used one word. Here, watch.
In honor of our great veterans on Veterans Day, pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
Well, there you go. He said vermin. Well, obviously that means he's Hitler because that's the kind of language that fascists use. That's the kind of language that Hitler used. Now, setting aside for a moment the hypocrisy here, because as a Republican living in America for the last 8 years, I have been routinely referred to as a maggot by Democrats and left-wing activists. See, they take MAGA, M-A-G-A, and then put a T at the end of it. Get it? You know, if you support Trump, you're a maggot. But that's elevated political rhetoric. Use the word vermin, and you're literally Hitler. And secondarily, let's not forget, Donald Trump is from New York, Queens to be specific. Vermin is tame for a New Yorker to use. And he's also a building owner and landlord in New York, where they know a little thing or two about the infestation of vermin. So I'm thinking it's part of his everyday vernacular, not just specifically when he's utilizing it for political speech. But set all of that aside. We now have the same old game that the media likes to play. Donald Trump says something that they find objectionable, and now every single other Republican must be made to answer for it. You must condemn him or you have to own it the same way. And of course, good old Chris Christie, old reliable Chris Christie, he decided to label Donald Trump a neo-Nazi because he used the word vermin. Well, in comes Vivek Ramaswamy, who was asked to play this game on CNN last night, and I'll let you watch how he handled it.
That language, they live like vermin. Do you believe that that is, as your Republican colleague Chris Christie has said, neo-Nazi rhetoric?
This is a classic mainstream media move. Pick some individual phrase of Donald Trump, focus on literally that word without actually interrogating the substance of what's at issue.
The word was chosen for a reason.
We are in the middle of a cultural war in this country.
The
well,
word
you know
was
what?
chosen for a
It's
reason.
actually describing a series of behaviors. You have Antifa and other related groups that have been burning down cities for the last 3 years in this country.
Would you describe them as
Wildly
vermin?
violating the rule of law. We have an invasion on our southern border. We have millions of people crossing our southern border. Let's talk about the substance of why we have to recognize that we're not in ordinary times.
Would you
So
use that language
the vocabulary of the
yourself?
vermin or not is not what's important. Well, I haven't used that language. So
So
you can
would
look at my track record on the campaign trail. I talk about the issues. We all talk about them differently.
Is this really what a political debate in America is reduced to? Is this what, would you use the same word? Would you describe something exactly the same way as your political opponent would? If not, why not? You know, I'd love to know if she would use that. In fact, if you won't use the word vermin to describe Antifa and pro-Hamas terrorist people who are saying kill the Jews while marching out, ripping down the American flag and putting up the Palestinian flag in celebration of Hamas terrorists who just slaughtered over 1,000 Israelis in cold blood, and who, by the way, are holding over 200 hostages, including 9 American hostages. If you will use the word vermin, I'm curious, CNN anchor, what word would you use? What word would you use? Well, don't tell me. There are good people on both sides of the argument. Is that what you would say? Oh, what word would you use? Can we call him slime? Are we allowed to call him slime? No, we can't call him slime? What would you call him? Can they live up to this standard?
But what I'm not going to do is play some game of focusing on some word that somebody else said without ignoring entirely the substance of what we're actually talking about. A border crisis of historic proportion, economic stagnation we haven't seen in 50 years, a national identity crisis and a loss of national pride in the next generation that's potentially existential for this country. Let's talk about our dependence on China. Today, we're actually talking about Xi Jinping, picking on Donald Trump's word vermin to talk about that status quo. You know what's vermin? What's running around San Francisco on a given day before Gavin Newsom cleaned it up on a dime to roll out the red carpet for Xi Jinping. If he could do that for Xi Jinping, he could have done it on an ordinary day. And yet we're here sitting talking not about the substance of that, but on one word that Donald Trump said in some speech in Miami. This is what's wrong with the mainstream media.
You know, I know there's a lot of people who have mixed feelings about Vivek Ramaswamy, and I get it. But I've interviewed him many times over the years, whether he was a candidate for president or not. And I find that Vivek Ramaswamy, what you just saw there, I find it incredibly satisfying and effective. And good for him for calling out this ridiculous game. Donald Trump said vermin. Now, you're a presidential candidate. We're going to spend this entire interview talking about that word and whether you would use it or not. And I'm not going to let you off the hook until you condemn him for it. Do you disavow him? It's an outrageous game, which, by the way, is a standard that they never have to live up to. And they certainly wouldn't have a Democrat candidate live up to it either. When every single Democrat comes on CNN, are they asked to condemn or support what Rashida Talib has said? Do you see them play that game? No. No, you don't. All right. Are you do you need a little palate cleanser? Do you need a little, come on, Larry, give us something uplifting here. Although, I mean, honestly, Vivek there, that was somewhat uplifting. All right, I got one for you. You know all those posters that have been torn down in the streets, the posters that show the missing Israeli children missing. They're not missing. They're being held hostage. They've been kidnapped. These young, innocent children who have been held hostage by the Hamas terrorists in Gaza, and they keep getting ripped down. They keep getting ripped down. Well, a young Israeli woman in Los Angeles had an idea. She wanted to give. She wanted to put the spotlight on these posters. She wanted to draw people's attention to these very posters in a way that was impossible for the posters to be torn down. As you can see here, she held the posters up, the flyers, on a board and walked through the streets of Los Angeles wearing a dress fashioned by a blood-stained Israeli flag. Dramatic and perfect for LA. Now watch what happened.
So much. That's appreciate it.
Support Israel. I hope everything will be great soon.
That was the corner of Beverly and Wilshire. Excuse me, corner of Wilshire and Rodeo. The corner of Wilshire and Rodeo at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. You'd recognize it. The Pretty Woman Hotel, everyone likes to call it. And Rodeo Drive. And nothing but support. Nothing but support and horns honking and people applauding and thumbs up. And, you know, at a time where we think that our country is going down the toilet because of the despicable behavior we see by the small but loud handful who are on the wrong side of this issue and the wrong side of history. It's just little moments like this that start to make you feel like we're going to be okay, that there is hope, that the real people of even Los Angeles get it. And good for her for doing such a, I mean, listen, obviously this is a visual stunt meant to provoke and meant to elicit a reaction and an emotion. And listen, you don't know exactly what would have happened. She could have been putting herself in danger. But instead, it turned out okay. It turned out that America is not so bad after all. It turns out that we get it. We, the people, get it. So maybe we just need to be confident in that and not continue to focus on the ugly, ugly side of it. All right. Yesterday in the Senate Judiciary Committee, history was made. Check it out. Dick Durbin, the appropriately named Dick Durbin, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, put out a very excited notice that Sarah Hill was having her hearing. Sarah Hill has been nominated to the North District of Oklahoma to the federal bench. This is one of Joe Biden's nominees for federal judge. Ms. Hill is an accomplished litigator with deep ties to Oklahoma, significant courtroom experience, and if confirmed, stand back, the first Native American woman to serve as a federal judge in Oklahoma. Huge Native American population in Oklahoma, of course. As you know, Elizabeth Warren, originally from Oklahoma, also Native American. So this was a big deal, a really huge moment. And as you can see here, accomplished litigator with significant courtroom experience. Well, let's see how she did, shall we? It looks like Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana had one very simple question for the very accomplished litigator with extensive courtroom experience.
The difference between a stay order and an injunction.
A stay order would prohibit, an injunction would restrain the parties from taking action. A stay order, I'm not sure that I actually can give you the.
Okay.
That.
Oof. That's kind of painful. So listen, I didn't go to law school. I do watch a lot of Law and Order. And I read books. I feel like I could answer this question. I feel like I could answer it more completely than litigator with extensive courtroom experience Sarah Hill could, nominee for the federal bench. But I feel bad here because clearly John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana, did not get the memo. Senator Kennedy, don't you know that if confirmed, Ms. Hill will be the first Native American woman as a federal judge in America? I mean, come on, isn't that enough for you?
The difference between a stay order and an injunction.
A stay order would prohibit.
Come on, you can get there.
An injunction would restrain the parties from taking action. A stay order, I'm not sure that I actually can.
Oh, she was so close. She was so close. As our friend Molly Hemingway put it, what Biden's judicial nominees lack in understanding of the law, they make up for multiple times over in radicalism. So, we got that going for us. And for those of you who are feeling a bit of deja vu, I got to say, Senator Kennedy is damn good at this.
Tell me how you analyze a Brady motion.
How I analyze a Brady motion?
Yes.
Senator, in my 4.5 years on the bench, don't believe I've had the occasion to address a Brady motion in my career.
Do you know what a Brady motion is?
Senator, in my time on the bench, I've not had occasion to address that, and so it's not coming to mind at the moment what a Brady motion is.
Do you recall the U.S. Supreme Court case, Brady v. Maryland?
I do recall the name of the case, Senator, yes.
And what did it hold?
I believe that the Brady case, Senator, I believe the Brady case involves something regarding the Second Amendment. It is not. I've not had occasion to address that. If that issue were to come before me, I would certainly analyze that Supreme Court precedent and apply it as I would need to the facts in front of me.
Well, I think that speaks for itself. I don't know about you, but this American right here, fully confident 100% in Joe Biden's ability to fill the federal courts with judges just like that. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, was questioned by multiple lawmakers with regard to his abysmal failure at the border. And one of the most cathartic moments came from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Secretary Mayorkas, I want you to look at these innocent Americans. Do you see them?
I do, Congresswoman.
They are dead. They're from Dalton, Georgia, in my district. They're dead because a 17-year-old, likely affiliated with the cartels, was smuggling illegal aliens into our country in Texas, breaking our laws, and this happens every single day in our country. Earlier this week, 8 Republicans joined the Democrats and protected your job. But I want you to know, you have a short time coming. You can honorably resign, or we are going to impeach you. And it's happening very, very soon.
Love seeing that. And it's one of the reasons why people like her, because she's bold and assertive and actually telling it like it is. You're going. You can resign now or you can be impeached, but it's going to happen. And boy, it sure better happen. If not because of that, because of this exchange that Mayorkas had with Congressman Michael Guest with regard to the thousands that are crossing our border illegally. He asked a really important question, having to juxtapose the performance of this Secretary of Homeland Security compared to Jay Johnson, who was Barack Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security. Jay Johnson said that if 1,000 people cross the border illegally, that was a bad day on the border. Right now, we're averaging 8,000.
So my question to you, if Secretary Johnson said 1,000 immigrants a day when he was in the position that you sent, if that was a bad day, and that 4,000 a day was a crisis, what is a bad day for you, Secretary Mayorkas? Because we see now that the numbers have exploded. They're no longer 1,000 a day. They're not even 4,000 a day when this article was written. They're over 11,000 a day. And so in the last 20 seconds, what number to you represents a bad day when we see the number of apprehensions increase dramatically? So I'll give you the remainder of my time to answer the question, and I'll yield back.
Vice Chairman Guest, we do not minimize the significance of the challenge at the southwest border, and we are intensely focused on it.
Is there a number? Would you like to give a number? I asked for a number. That was my question. What number to you represents a bad day? And are you refusing to answer the question?
Vice Chairman Guest, as I said, we do not minimize the significance of the challenge at the southwest border.
That wasn't my question, Mr. Mayorkas. I asked a simple question. Give me a number. And you're filibustering and you're refusing to answer the question. What is that number?
I have answered your question.
No, you haven't, Mr.
No, he really hasn't answered the question because he doesn't care. He literally has contempt for the process, contempt for Vice Chair Guest, contempt for the Homeland Security Committee, and contempt for all of Congress. In fact, there's a statute that they could exercise here, literally called contempt of Congress, because Mr. Mayorkas only shows contempt for the people in that room. He shows contempt for Congress. They could impeach him for that too. They should impeach him for his dismal performance at the border. But let me just leave you with this. If Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas deserves to be impeached because of his failures at the border, then what's the logical rationale for not impeaching Joe Biden for the failure at the border? Because as far as I know, Secretary Mayorkas is doing exactly what Joe Biden has told him to do. He serves at the pleasure of the president, and the president certainly loves him in his job. Otherwise, he would have been fired. Joe Biden approves of his job on the border because, well, he's done exactly what Joe Biden wants. So I guess the question is, if it's legitimate to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas because of the disaster at the border, why isn't it also legitimate to impeach Joe Biden for the very same thing? Rashida Talib was walking through the halls of her congressional office building, and she got caught up with by a Fox News reporter who had some simple questions for her.
Congresswoman, do you regret using the phrase "from the river to the sea"? It's used by terrorists to call for the genocide of the Jewish people. Do you regret using it?
Our secret microphones actually picked up the phone conversation that Rashida Talib was having during this entire conversation. And I think I've got the audio here that I can play for you. Here. This is what was going on the phone call that Rashida Talib was having. At the tone, the time will be 12:21 and 7 seconds. Beep. At the tone, the time will be 12:21 and 12 seconds. Beep. Yeah, she's not really on the phone. She's not talking to anybody. This was kind of an old school joke. Nobody calls time anymore, do they? That was a 90s joke. If it were 1994 right now, you guys would have lost it. That would have been, it's hilarious. Okay, Boomer?
The White House says that phrase can be anti-Semitic. Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman? Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman Talib? Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman Talib? Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman Talib? Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman Talib?
This might have to be my new ringtone. Hearing that over and over again. How easy is it for Rashida Talib to just stop and say, all right, here's why I said what I said. I recognize now that it is a phrase used by terrorists. I certainly didn't mean it that way. Here's what she could have done that. And she could have said, of course I'm not anti-Semitic. Some of my best friends are terrorists. I mean, Jews. She could have done that. But she didn't. Not even close.
Congresswoman, do you regret using the phrase from the river to the sea? It's used by terrorists to call for the genocide of the Jewish people. Do you regret using it? The White House says that phrase can be anti-Semitic. Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman? Are you anti-Semitic, Congresswoman Talib?
She didn't even stop and say, I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone with my Jewish banker trying to make me more money. You know, something like that. Of course I'm not anti-Semitic. Some of my favorite comedians are Jews. I love that Seinfeld character. Larry David, he's the best. Couldn't even muster that. Of course she's anti-Semitic. Of course she is. No, she doesn't regret saying it. Anti-Semites never regret their hate. She might only regret it because she was recently censured by Congress because of it. Speaking of Congress, Chip Roy always brings the heat. And what we like about Chip Roy is it's pretty bipartisan. He was a little annoyed at his Republican caucus last night. They passed a continuing resolution that then went to the Senate and also got passed. The government's not going to shut down. Yay. And apparently the main goal of the House Republicans was just that. Let's just get something out of here so we don't shut down the government. But Chip Roy had another idea. Okay, fine, you got that passed. How about we pass one more bill? Why don't we send one more bill over to Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden? One more bill that actually states who we are and what we stand for. Chip Roy, take it away.
Why aren't we putting another bill on the floor of the House right now and sending it over to the Senate to shove it down their throats, to say that we Republicans stand for cutting spending. We Republicans stand for standing with Israel. We Republicans stand for securing the border of the United States. No. Let's just go back and go raise some money so we can do more fundraisers so we can then try to get elected, so we can come back here and offer more excuses for why we don't get the job done. You know what the excuse will be next year? Oh, well, we won the House and we won the Senate, if we could even do that, but we don't have 60 in the Senate, Chip. We can't do what you want to do because we don't have 60 votes in the Senate. I've heard nothing but excuses for the 20 years that I've either been a staffer in this town, back in Texas watching it closely, or now back as a member. Nothing but excuses. Nothing but empty promises. And the time for those excuses is over. Today we took down a rule. Yes, because it was a closed rule. We had a closed rule, which means you can't amend it. The Rules Committee put forward a bill for Iran to go, quote, freeze the $6 billion sitting in Qatar through a closed rule. We were not allowed to amend it. Such is the way things operate in the people's house if we don't police it every single day. We changed things in January. We've been opening the place up, but that was a reversion right back to the mean. You can't amend it, little boy. You're just a backbencher. You know what? Yes, we will. We will force amendments because we had a better approach than a simple freezing of the $6 billion. You know what we wanted to do? We wanted to tell Iran no more. We're going to force the administration to stop issuing waivers to sanctions against Iran so we can stop the enrichment of Iran at the expense of Israel and at the expense of our own national security. Just yesterday, another $10 billion of waivers, $10 billion of waivers for Iran to sell electricity to Iraq. We are enriching Iran to be at war with us. We are enriching Iran to fund the killing of Jews in Israel. And yet Republicans just whistle by. Just say, oh, let's just issue a little bill. Let's just do $6 billion of freezing these assets in Qatar. Why don't you stop the actual blood money? Why don't you actually stand up and stop Iran from making billions of dollars giving oil to China? We talk a big game about Ukraine. We wear our little blue and yellow pins. Look at us. Look how compassionate we are to help people. Well, what the hell are we actually doing? Blank checks to Ukraine to go into the pockets of oligarchs, massive corruption, all getting documented by the day. We send a bill over to the Senate. Democrats kill it because they'd rather side with the IRS than Israel. And we can't even move a bill to hip check the Iranians who want to kill us and exterminate the Jews in Israel.
How can you argue with this? He's 100% right. And I haven't been in D.C. as long as he has. I think he said 20 years. But let me tell you something. I remember in 2010 when we were told, give us the majority and fire Nancy Pelosi. We'll go to regular order and we'll kill Obamacare. And they did. They got a huge majority. John Boehner was speaker. We never went to regular order. And they didn't do anything to kill Obamacare. So then they said, well, give us the majority in the Senate in 2014. And they got the majority in the Senate in 2014. And they said, give us that majority and we will kill Obamacare. And they tried. They had a filibuster and a quasi-government shutdown. You remember Ted Cruz reading Green Eggs and Ham, and he said this is going to increase the cost of health insurance, and well, they couldn't do it. They said, well, I'm sorry, we don't have enough votes in the Senate. Sure, we have the majority, but we don't have enough votes. And so it went through, and Obamacare went through, and Ted Cruz was right in between Green Eggs and Ham versus, and all of our insurance went up, and people lost their doctors and lost their insurance, and Barack Obama said, oh, I guess I got that one wrong. Oh, well. And, of course, we're all screwed now. But then they said, well, listen, give us the presidency, and then we'll kill Obamacare. Then we'll be able to do it. So Trump gets elected. They've got a majority in the House. They've got a majority in the Senate. And then what happens? John McCain. And we're stuck with Obamacare, and we still got Obamacare. And the cost of health insurance has gone up even more. And health care has gone up even more because of it. And we were right all along. And he's right. Chip Roy is right. We've been down this road before. We got the majority in the House now. Now give us the majority in the Senate. Now give us the White House. Now we'd have to have 60 votes in the Senate. Pass the bills. Pass the bills and make them vote no on it. Guess what? That's how you win elections. That's how you win elections. We passed this bill. They said no in the Senate. Give us the majority in the Senate. And next time we come through, it'll go through. Except then they don't do it. We can't leave on this, right? Oh my gosh, we're pushing on an hour. We've never gone this long before. Kevin, I'm going to do it. Kevin, we're going to do one more video. I'm going to make your life harder.
That's fine by me. Let's do it.
Is it? Are you on one? Because this one is a feel-good one. And now I'm all worked up.
One more.
And everyone else is worked up. And there's somebody on YouTube saying that he's the king of the hamburgers, which I found pretty fun. I do like seeing the comments in YouTube. But we need to end with an up note. Because are we doing a show tomorrow? It's Friday. Are we doing a show? We're not going to do a show.
We'll see.
We're not sure yet.
We'll see.
We might.
Stay
If we
tuned.
don't, let's end the week with this one. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your
If we do, we'll be live again at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow Eastern.
Look at you with the promo. That's right. All right. Well, I'll tell you, because you made your first appearance yesterday, people were demanding more.
Well, I'm back.
So maybe you need to do like co-host with me tomorrow on a Friday. Take a little edge off me. Take a little heat off me. Why do I have to be the trained monkey? Why do I have to do all the work, man?
Sure, I'll dance.
Thank you. That's right. Yeah, you will. All
Not
right,
like
let's
those TikTokers we talked about at the beginning, though.
No, please not. All right, enough of you. Look at him. He's trying to muscle in on my job here. All right, here we go. This is one of those great cathartic moments. And we're going to go a little meta. I'm going to comment on a dude who was commenting on another person's video. But trust me, it's going to be worth it. This is a Brit in London talking about how a World War I memorial is really a memorial celebrating the Palestinians of World War I. And she gets a little bit of a history lesson.
This monument is in Hyde Park, London.
Well, your headgear tells me you're about to try to relate this to Palestinians, so let's hear it.
It commemorates all the countries and ranks who gave their lives in the First World War.
No, it doesn't. That's the Royal Regiment of Artillery Memorial. It was built to honor specifically the 49,076 members of the Royal Regiment of Artillery who gave their lives in World War I. It's far more Englishmen than that gave their lives in that war. But go off, sister.
They don't want us to protest on Armistice Day, but what they don't realize is that Armistice Day is a commemoration of Palestinians too.
No, it most certainly is not. I assume you're about to drop some evidence on me that proves your point.
Right there, it says Palestine.
Yeah, that's not honoring Palestinians. There's a couple different ways I can prove that. Like, for instance, your claim was that because this said Palestine, they were celebrating Palestinians. Well, that would also mean they were honoring Arabians, Russians, Central Asians, Persians, Macedonians, as well as every other geographical area that was under control of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire being who the British were at fucking war with. Not a single Palestinian fought on the side of the British during World War I. They fought against the British. Do you know who did fight alongside the British? Jews. More than 10,000 of them as part of the Jewish Legion. This memorial doesn't even honor them. This is specifically for the Royal Regiment of Artillery. There would never be a memorial anywhere that honors the Palestinians fighting on behalf of the British, because they didn't do that. They fought against them. I am blown away that you took the time to go walk to this monument and you didn't fucking read it. Not only did you not take the time to read this specific memorial, you obviously haven't taken any of the time to learn any of the history about World War I. So probably best if you stop talking about it.
This man is my hero. This man for prime minister, although he's not British, he's an American. This man, you know, the King of England, Charles, is it Charles now? Yeah, let's go. Are we calling him Charles? Sure, Charles. King Charles often can give an honorary knighthood to Americans. They did it for Ronald Reagan. This man deserves to be a knight. What's his name? Older millennial or a younger Gen X? Let's. I think you're being generous. You got your color in the beard and mustache, pal. All right, sure. We'll go with older millennial. He's an older millennial. Oh, Sir Older Millennial deserves a knighthood. He deserves the Royal Order of the Garter or whatever it is they do over there. That is freaking brilliant. This as much of a cesspool as TikTok is, and it is, this makes it somewhat worthwhile. Although here's the thing. You get rid of TikTok, this guy transcends and continues this on whatever social media platform he wants to be on because the content's just that good. That was brilliant and a good way to end today. If you're watching us on record, please watch us live around 11:30, as you heard Kevin just mentioned. It's around where we start this thing every day. And watch us and share us across all of the Town Hall websites. That's Red State, Hot Air, Twitchy, Bearing Arms, PJ Media, and of course, the granddaddy of them all, townhall.com, or on our social media pages. It's always great to do this with you. And we broke a record, 1:05 today. Yikes. I had a lot on my mind. What can I tell you? We'll see you next time. My name's Larry O'Connor, but I'd like you to call me Larry.